WWE had their final week in the build-up to their first major UK event in 3 decades, Clash at the Castle. Roman Reigns will be defending the Undisputed Universal title against Drew McIntyre, while Sheamus will be fighting Gunther for the IC belt. This is Wrestling Up, and here's what WWE told us through programming in the last week. Before we get into the rest of the video, make sure you subscribe to Wrestling Hub and turn on all notifications to stay up to date with everything in the world of pro wrestling. Also, don't forget to follow us on Instagram at Wrestling Hub Official and follow us on Twitter at Wrestling_Hub. Gunther will be holding the WWE Championship before too long if his booking on SmackDown is anything to go by. Last week, he continued to appear impressive again. He interrupted Sheamus and the Brawling Brutes when they were disrespecting him, making it clear that he would not be taking anything lying down. The IC champion showed that he was ready to stand up for himself, and the facedown between himself and the challenger was intense to say the least. The way Ludwig Kaiser did battle against Holland and Butch, which Gunther didn't even flinch, not even breaking his gaze with Sheamus. While there have seemingly been plans for Sheamus to win the Intercontinental Championship for a long time, it seems unlikely that it's going to happen right now. Sheamus will probably win the title at least once before he retires, but for the time being, Gunther is going to retain and possibly have a long run. It might take a long time for him to lose, and when he finally does, it will be because he's ready for the main event. The last 2 years have been up and down for Apollo Crews. The star was on the receiving end of a long-awaited push. For almost 5 years on the main roster in 2019 and 2020, under the leadership of Paul Heyman, it looked like he was finally getting the recognition he deserved. Despite being a part of the main roster, he was not seen as a top star. He had put in a lot of time, but for most of that time, he was treated as a jobber. He went on to become one of the bigger stars in the company in the Paul Heyman era, as he was the one to win the US title. Talking about it later, Crews mentioned that he had Heyman to thank for getting a career revival. 100%. Paul Heyman is fantastic to work for. He's been very hands-on with me and he's helped me a lot, especially a lot in areas like my promos. And that's one thing I feel I can always improve on. I can improve on all areas of my game and make sure I work on becoming the complete superstar, and I won't stop until that happens. He went on to add that he knew that fans didn't really have a reason to like him before, and it made sense that they didn't connect with him. That's what I felt like too. I felt like I was doing a lot of floating around. I did stuff here and there, but nothing I could ever really dig my teeth into or show what I'm really capable of. I was given opportunities, but I don't feel like I was ever given anything I could or even the fans could latch onto. There's no reason for them to really like me. It's like, oh yeah, here's this cool guy. This big guy who can do cool moves and cool stuff in the ring, but why do we want to like this guy? You know what I mean? However, after all, that when Heyman was gone from the company, Crews found himself in a weird position once again. His push disappeared, and he was repackaged and given a Nigerian accent, as well as Commander Aziz as his bodyguard. While he was given an Intercontinental title run, the support that he had behind him as the US champion fighting top stars was gone. It instead made him a heel, and when he finally lost the IC title, his push disappeared. He went from being one of the best stars on the roster to someone who was forgotten. Thankfully, unlike a large number of WWE stars, he was not released, and instead was brought down to NXT. His Nigerian accent was gone, and once again, he was repackaged to a cleaner, more simple version of himself. Now in NXT, he was mocked about his previous gimmick by Waller. Yet another sign that the current team in charge of management has been mocking the previous team's direction for the superstars and the way their booking was utterly destroyed. Indy Hartwell faced Blair Davenport during last week's NXT. During the show, while she gave her best, she was not able to win. After the bout, Davenport called out Mandy Rose and got her challenge answered, and she was added to their Worlds Collide bout. However, that was not the only thing that happened, as Indy, who was left alone and apparently at rock bottom in the ring, had something to be happy about as well. Dexter Lumis showed up at ringside, and the two of them had a reunion after months apart, given that Lumis had been released from the company. They left together, but while Dexter had to get arrested and was taken away by the police, but Indy had something to remember the moment by, as she was left looking at a note that Lumis had written her, saying, "Goodbye, Indy, for now. I love you forever." Thus, yet again, WWE's current management team made a reference to an old NXT storyline that had been decimated by Vince McMahon when he was in charge. Last week on SmackDown, Sami Zayn and Jey Uso went at it. While they didn't come to blows, it was clear that there was heat between the two. Sami tried to get into Roman's locker room but was not allowed at first by Jey, who didn't want him in there. He was finally allowed in there when Roman then thanked him for the interference the previous week, where he had saved Roman by taking the Claymore from Drew McIntyre to save the Tribal Chief. This was a sign towards the fact that they were more accepting of each other finally, and that with the exception of Jey, Sami was being accepted into the bloodline. With Jimmy already more accepting and clearly happy with Sami, Jey remained the only outlier. Jey asked Sami to handle business and take on McIntyre before Roman's match for him. Sami battled McIntyre and didn't do too badly, showing that he was more than capable in the ring. Ultimately, he had to take the Claymore, and that was all that there was for him on the show. Sami was taken out, but the distraction this provided was perfect for Roman, hitting him with the spear to take him out. Sami's match had weakened McIntyre enough that the numbers game came into play. The Usos and Reigns attacked Drew and destroyed him with steel chairs and another spear. The Usos also sent him into the barricade, which allowed Sami the perfect angle to hit him with the haluva kick. Ultimately, he locked in the guillotine, choking him out and leaving him lying in the middle of the ring. They posed over him, indicating that was the plans they had for him in the future as well at Clash at the Castle. There were two significant things on this week's Raw that came out of Seth Rollins' interview with Matt Riddle. After they got out of their cars in the parking lot, they started a brawl and had to be separated. When they finally confronted each other in the interview later, there was another surprise. Instead of being called just Riddle, in the graphic that was provided, he was called Matt Riddle. On top of that, he was then called Matt Riddle by Seth, showing that he has his first name back. Vince McMahon had randomly shortened the names of superstars when he was in charge, and there have been rumors that Triple H was going to undo this. Fans didn't really have time to catch their breath after the first surprise. Once the official interview was done and they were supposed to be leaving, Rollins decided to take shots at Riddle. After Riddle made a comment about Becky being the only man in the relationship with Seth, Rollins said Riddle had been left by his wife and had his kids taken away. Riddle appeared to get angry and dropped F-bombs. The two went at it verbally, with Riddle clearly eager to get his hands on Rollins. In a twist on this week's show, where most fans were expecting Bayley's team of Io Sky and Dakota Kai to become the new Women's Tag Team Champions, WWE provided a twist. Instead of them as the babyface team of Raquel Rodriguez and Aaliyah, who won. This might indicate that Sasha Banks and Naomi are not only coming back soon, they may be doing it as heels. The babyface team that won it might not have been the first choice, with Nikita Lyons' team and Toxic Attraction ruled out of proceedings in the tournament due to injuries. However, with WWE pulling the trigger on them, now that Naomi and Sasha's return is expected, WWE might use the negative feeling towards the team to bring them in as heels. While they're still both very popular, it's clear that there's a section of fans who have turned against them, given their walk out of the company. If WWE do use this, it could lead to a few interesting feuds. It would not hurt Rodriguez to lose either, while a win for Sasha and Naomi would be huge and make them seen as even bigger. On Raw this week, Sami didn't really further endear himself to the bloodline. While they were interrupted by Owens, he tried to put things at ease between the Usos and Owens. He failed and ended up making it a match for Jey Uso to face his old friend. Owens had the legitimate grievance that without Jey, he would have been the Universal Champion when he faced Roman Reigns a year back. The two ended up having a cracker of a match, with Kevin Owens coming away with the win. While there was no direct interference from Sami, him not drawing the DQ by interfering in the match was what cost Jey. The argument was enough for a distraction for Owens to win. This is clearly what's coming next for Zayn and WWE. While fans have been hoping that Kurt Angle's return meant that he would be leading to the last match that was not against Happy Corbin, unfortunately that was not the case. He was not booked to wrestle or even take a bump. Instead, he was booked to be interrupted by Alpha Academy. The Street Profits came out for the save-in, battled and beat Gable and Otis, allowing a classic celebration by Angle with Milk. It appears that it was a one-off appearance for the company and in a non-wrestling role. Nonetheless, it was a clear message to the previous management, aka Vince McMahon, that even though Kurt had refused to return when he had requested him, that was no longer the case with Triple H in charge. And these were things WWE told us through programming in the last week. I hope you're all having a great day. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you later.